All right, welcome back. Hope you found those first two labs useful, adding your your new hosts to the vSphere inventory, but more importantly in lab number 2, creating that distributed switch called DVS lab and adding 5 hosts to that switch, and then of course adding your virtual machines to the port group that belongs to that switch. Basically doing everything that we were doing in the demo with earlier in the first lesson. So in this lesson, though, we're going to now move on towards day-to-day management of the vSphere distributed switches, right? Kind of cover some of the important features that we have available for troubleshooting, as well as maintaining and updating our distributed switch. So in this lesson, we're going to discuss how to perform a distributed switch health check, how to back up and restore a distributed switch configuration, and how to describe the automatic rollback and recovery of network configurations. So up first is this powerful feature called Health Check. This was introduced in the vSphere 5 timeframe, so it's been around for some time. It's a great and powerful support feature. It helps you identify and troubleshoot configuration errors in a vSphere distributed switch. Now, how on earth are we going to have configuration errors? I thought this thing was supposed to be easy, right? Well, imagine you've got those 50 ESXi hosts, each one with probably multiple adapters. Maybe, like we were talking about, you might have one big aggregate pipe where you have 2 uplinks on every host, and you're just putting everything through this distributed switch, right? Your VM traffic, your migration vMotion traffic, and your storage traffic. You put all kinds of things through here. Of course, they're all going to be VLAN. But now you've got several adapters, probably at least 2 adapters per host. So that's 50 hosts. If you got a large enough environment and 2 adapters per host, that's 100 uplinks, right? Connecting to 100 switch ports on your physical network. What we need to make sure is however we configured our distributed switch, whatever networking settings, whether it's with VLANs or with its MTU settings, or if it's teaming policies, there's a variety of things that you're going to want to make sure you set up in the distributed switch should match all 100 of those switch ports on the physical switches. If there's ever any kind of mismatch, there's going to be a breakdown in the network communication from that host with that adapter. Finding that in a large environment can be sometimes finding the needle in the haystack, trying to find that one thing in a large environment. There'll be an error message, but you'll have to probably still poke around to find it. The point of Health Check is that it regularly examines the settings on the distributed switch and the physical switch ports and compares the settings. And if it finds a mismatch, it'll alert you which host and which uplink there's a mismatch. Basically finding the error message or the error condition very, very quickly. Things it looks for are things listed here. It'll look for mismatched VLAN trunks between the distributed switch and the physical switch. It'll attempt to find mismatched MTU settings between the distributed switch and the physical adapter and the physical switch ports. And it will attempt to find mismatched virtual switch teaming policies on your physical switch port channel settings. And as it discovers them, it'll then trigger an alert. You then find very quickly which host, which adapter is having the issue. Now, it's not going to tell you which is the correct setting. Is the physical switch port the correct setting, or is the virtual switch the correct setting? It's just telling you that these 2 settings are not in agreement with each other, which is important. You need to make sure that everything is in proper agreement. So say, for instance, you have an example like this. You've got, say, some switch ports. On the bottom of that page, you notice we've got some switch ports, and it seems to be that even the switch ports aren't all set up properly, are they? I mean, we've got 2 switch ports. They're both trunking VLAN 10. All right, well, that sounds good uniformity. However, they're both teaming without any special settings. So actually, they're not teaming. They're basically just VLAN trunk ports, and that's it. However, one has an MTU of 1,500 bytes, and the other one has an MTU of 9,000 bytes. That already looks a little suspicious if you're trying to connect it all to the same vSphere environment. But now let's look at the port groups. The orange port group on the left, it's configured to basically provide VLAN 20. So it requires a VLAN trunk of VLAN 20 on the physical switch port. I don't see one of those. It's doing MTU 9000. So that's going to be incorrect on the left side, but it'll be correct on the right side. So one of the switch ports is correct, one of the switch ports is incorrect. And then it's teaming IP hashing, which means it needs an Ether channel 802.3AD trunk on all the switch ports for that port group. And I don't see that set anywhere on the physical switch port. So there's another mismatch. So that orange group there is going to have some problems on some of the different switch ports, right? Definitely on the VLAN and on the IP hashing. The green port group, well, that one looks a little bit better. It's got VLAN 10 that matches to both of the different switch ports. It's using MTU 9000. So again, that one is okay on the right-hand switch port, but the left-hand switch port is not correct. At least they're not matched correctly. And then its teaming policy is set to port ID, which basically requires no special teaming policy on the physical switch ports. So as far as the physical switch ports with that port group and the teaming policy, they're okay. So what we wanted to be able to do here is make it easy to troubleshoot this. Find out which port groups are having issues with the different physical switch ports. And we certainly are going to have problems with the orange port group. It's not matching several things on the physical networking side. So that's what this is trying to find, right? Find, especially in large environments, where these mismatches are occurring. So what you do is you actually have to go to the distributed switch first, right? So we're on the distributed switch DVS lab. You go to the configure tab and you click on health check. And then you edit the settings. And basically you enable the two big things that it monitors for. VLAN and MTU settings, make sure it's enabled. And teaming and failover, make sure it's enabled. I'm not quite sure why they separate this out. I mean, health check's great for all these things. So you might as well enable it for everything. And then it checks every minute by default. You can adjust that. So now you've enabled it, right? And now you probably need to let it wait for a minute for it to discover things. Because again, it's going to check every minute. You find the results, well, probably you'll find yellow flags or red flags triggered on the different devices too, but you can actually find them under the monitor tab. So again, I've got my switch selected. I click on monitor and I go to health and I can see where everything is. Now, our example here doesn't match my example a few slides back. This is a bigger issue, right? We've got 5 hosts. They all have red flags. So there's definitely some issues. It tells me right here, overall health is in a warning condition. That's not good, right? Normally what you might find is like the one thing that's got the problem. I mean, like for instance, the example we showed you a few slides ago was showing that, okay, there's an MTU setting that's got an issue on one of the hosts, but then there's also this VLAN setting that should be set. It's kind of spread around the different issues. Here, this is every single thing that could cause an error seems to have an error. So this doesn't usually happen. This is, I guess, somebody's last day at the job, maybe. But this is what we have here. We've got 5 hosts that are definitely reporting some error conditions. And it tells us here that the VDS, the distributed switch, its status is good. At least the switch is up. But it says for VLAN health status, we got a warning. For MTU health status, we have a warning on every single host. Teaming and failover, warning on every single host. It's kind of ironic that it's every single thing is mismatched. But what you can do is you click on one of them. So here we are clicking on host number 3. The details for number 3 will show down here. Under VLAN or MTU or teaming and failover, you can monitor each one of them individually. Here it says, if I click on VLAN, it's going to tell me, okay, on this host number 3, both of his uplinks, which happen to be VMNIC1 and VMNIC2 on host number 3, they have been configured on their port groups to belong to VLAN 37. That's what the distributed switch has been configured for. The VLAN status on the physical switch says that's not what we're doing, right? Not supported. It's not telling you what the correct one is. It's just telling you it's not this, right? So there's definitely a problem with your VLAN configuration. And that's kind of what this will do for each one of these, right? The MTU will tell you, okay, we're configured for 9000. That's not supported in the network. You have to go make sure it's set correctly for whatever it is in the network. Teaming and failover, it might say, we're doing ether channel, right? IP-based load balancing. And then, the physical network doesn't have anything like that. So it's going to tell you, okay, you're set for 1, but the physical network is not doing that. So this is where you find exactly where the problems are. It's not usually this extreme. This is where every single thing that could go wrong has gone wrong. Where this is even more powerful is if there's that one little thing on one host, on one uplink, on the switch port, there's a mismatch. And so it'll find that very, very easily, very, very quickly. And that's what makes this really helpful, very useful. Just be careful though. One thing that is an interesting side effect of health check is the way how health check discovers these issues. Health check does this, it does its work by generating MAC addresses for each of the different uplinks that he's actually connected to on the physical switches, and creating a MAC address for each of the different health check services. So that could be a reason why you were given some choices as to how many different health check services you would like to enable. Since there are 3 different health check services, each one of these uplinks will generate 3 new MAC addresses for the way in which the system verifies if that actual uplink can connect over that type of connection. And what that does is it can result in your physical switch, the CAM table used to map all the MAC addresses that are being used against each of the different uplinks. If you have older networking infrastructure, right? We're talking about infrastructure that's probably more than 3 years old or 4 years old. Then you'd want to make sure that this isn't going to overload those CAM tables, because that's one of the issues that you have to be aware of with health check, is it can overload those CAM tables on older switching hardware. So not saying you can't use it, just that if you found that there is a weird issue and you wanted to help make health check find the issue, that's actually something you can do after the fact. You can turn health check on after you've got the issue, let it discover what the issue is, help you narrow down and troubleshoot and resolve the problem much more quickly. And then when you're done fixing the problem, go ahead and turn health check back off, if you happen to have older hardware. If you've got more modern hardware, then this isn't such a big deal. But that's health check. Very, very helpful, very, very powerful. Can help narrow down, especially in large environments, those pesky little issues where there is a mismatch on the virtual side compared to the physical side. So that's that. We'll take a quick break, and we'll see you in the next part of this lesson, where we'll take a look at being able to back up and provide rollback on your virtual switch. So we'll see you in a few minutes.